Whatever the first meeting was.
I will call this regular council meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. Kathy, I've been here all day. I don't know how you do it. You've been here all day. Would you please lead us in the pledge?
Surely. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'd remain standing for a moment, please. Heavenly Father, in this season of fall and part-time winter, our thoughts turn to the Thanksgiving holiday. Lord, keep us focused on giving thanks for our families, our relatives, our friends, and everything that you provide for us on a daily basis. Let's also keep in mind those who, as we head into an extended holiday season, have no one and are alone at this time in their life. So Lord, give them the strength to endure, and Lord, give us the love and strength and compassion to treat those less fortunate in a Christ-like manner. And we ask for all of this tonight in your holy name. Amen. Amen. Hey, Kathy, roll, please.
Carter. Here. Walter.
Here.
Powell.
Here.
Barstow.
Here.
Hayes. Here. Picken.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum present tonight. First thing on the agenda is citizens' comments. If you'd wish to speak, you'll have 5 minutes. We'll need your name and address. So who would like to speak tonight? Mr. Rath?
Name is Robert Rath, 310 Oak Meadow Drive here in Pataskala. I've been before you before, and I come tonight and you'll never guess what about. Oak Meadow Drive and the sidewalks. As you know, I pushed for that, and we're getting them. But since their installation, I have a few concerns. Now, I wasn't here at the last meeting in December, but my neighbor Fred Perry was. And I want to share with you an email that I sent to Mr. Barstow, Mr. Powell, Mr. Haynes, and Mr. King. And I'm just going to read it as I sent it to them. As a longtime resident of Oak Meadow Drive, I would like to offer my agreement with the concerns Mr. Perry shared with Council Monday, November 4, 2019. I agreed to pay for concrete sidewalks of the entire frontage of my property, which includes my driveway. I find it disturbing that those residents with gravel driveways will have concrete sidewalks and aprons installed for consistent walkway. I would think that the asphalt driveways would be addressed in the same manner. What is required for ADA compliance? I got a big question there. And I have some people told me this is not in compliance. I would point out that the sidewalks were recently installed along Vine Street, as many of you know, through a school program. And all the driveways along Vine Street on both sides, either concrete or asphalt or gravel, have a concrete apron and sidewalk. And then if it's asphalt, it's continued. I sent this email and I did get a reply from Mr. King. And what he shared with me was that the decision was made by, and I don't know who, that if you had concrete before, concrete would be put back. If you had asphalt, asphalt would be put back. My understanding was, well, we're paying for concrete over the entire frontage of our property. And I would think that would be consistent, but it wasn't, okay? And so I was going to wait until December to come to see how all the work had been completed, because there were 3 other driveways that I was concerned about. One of the driveways is at a property at 153 Hickory Lane. And that's, if you're not familiar with, that's the street the city or this construction had to go down to tap in or get the water down to the creek. Along that side of the street where they dug, there were 3 concrete driveways, 1 brick, and 2 gravel. The first 2 gravel go to a twin single. Today, they poured the second driveway there with all concrete. It was a gravel driveway. There's no sidewalks on that street. My question is, why would we put concrete back when it was gravel before, and there was no sidewalk installed there? The other is, and I called the city about this, the street department, right about the time this project started, the resident of 193 Oak Meadow Drive, which is on the west side of the street where the walks aren't installed, decided to add a secondary drive parallel to his existing asphalt drive, which goes to his backyard. And it's just gravel. Well, today they poured a concrete apron there. I find it difficult to accept. And the other thing I'll tell you, I've been talking with the construction workers, both over doing the drainage part, the concrete work, as well as the paving. The gentleman I talked today about the concrete told me, he says, Mr. Rath, I don't understand why they didn't maintain the sidewalk the whole way, but we did what we were told to do. Which, he's following that lead. But I says to him, out of curiosity, you got 5 driveways on this side where the walk is, how much more would that have cost? He said probably about $5,000. Well, Mr. King tells me, we've already put too much money in this project. We agreed to pay for the sidewalk in front of us. In the assessment that I received, it's in the order of $2,400. My driveway is 22 feet wide. That's $350 worth of concrete that I didn't get. So I expect that assessment to be changed. But having said that, how can we put concrete in 3 locations that really wasn't needed, but yet where it would have made sense to put it, it didn't happen? So those are my questions. I really appreciate the work's being done. And I'll share you something about the communication I had with the workers from River Rock Construction. Nice guys. Great rapport. The number of times I talked to them, they said, Mr. Rath, all the people that live right on this street are really nice people. But those people that live to the north of you, he says, I've never seen such obnoxious people in all my life. It's like, get out of our way, you're bothering us. And I said, well, I can't speak for them. But I said, we appreciate what's happening here and we appreciate the work you're doing. So I share that with you, and I hope somehow, my driveway's already been repaved where the sidewalk should have been. But I was told in one situation in Columbus, the right person drove by and saw that in Columbus, and they were sued, and they had to tear it out and put concrete sidewalk and apron in. So, I don't know if that's gonna happen here, but I just wish that we would have been asked ahead of time, what are your expectations here? Because that was not my expectation. I thank you for your time.
All right. Anybody else wish to speak tonight? All right. Seeing none, introduction, discussion, and approval of consent agenda matters.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion? And roll, please.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Consent agenda passes. On to reports. We had the last meeting of the Grow-Licking County Board met here today in Pataskala Chambers, and we had a great meeting. Let's see, some of this stuff we can wait till later, but I want to thank everybody that showed up for Veterans Day. We had a great celebration on a nice day. The weather was a little chilly, but we fired the cannon and got the names read, and everybody was extremely happy. Although we do need to make sure that next year we're advertising that we're not doing it. Had a few folks that didn't show up and showed up on the 11th, but that's up to the American Legion. As I told some folks, they set the schedule and I just work with them. So we opted for a better day with better weather and a chance for more folks to come, doing it on a Saturday. Just want to remind everybody, we won't be having a meeting before Thanksgiving, so if you know some folks or some families or some individuals that might need a little boost, we are having the free Thanksgiving dinner again between 11 and 4 down at the Presbyterian Church, which is right across from the old PD. Should say across from the utility department. And come one, come all, spend some time talking to some folks that may not have anybody to talk to, and enjoy a meal. I'm sure the open house will be talked about later. We did do a once in a lifetime thing, I think. Chamber and myself had a ribbon cutting for 3 businesses all at once down at where Rusty's and Calico Cupboard and Soggy Paws is. We did a kind of a grand reopening for those folks. They've been around town a long time, and I appreciate them staying in town, and they're really excited in their new spot. And I guess Rusty's is in really good shape now. They've never had a drive-through window, so that's new, and they're very, very happy to be up and running again. That was 2 weeks without wings that I never want to go through again. So we're glad they're back. I think that's all for now. Oh, and of course, the cookie walk. We're going to have a meeting before then, but if you put on your calendars, of course, the cookie walk is the 7th, and also the Outville Christmas parade is on the 14th. So as we start to get into the holidays, I just want you guys to get those on your calendars. Mr. Barstow, what do you got for me tonight?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to congratulate Ms. Carter and Mr. Lee on winning re-election, and specifically congratulate Mr. Hicken on winning the Kim Jong-un Award for having the lowest undervote in his election. He's received an appropriate commemorative gift for that. Rarely. It's fantastic, mainly because it was picked up by me. But anyway, seriously, I want to talk seriously. I want on the serious side. I want to address Mr. Rath's comments because he was not here at the last meeting. So my recollection is that I think it was council's guidance that folks who don't get a concrete sidewalk across their property would have their assessment reduced. At least I think that's what I think should happen. Because I agree, if you're not getting, if you shouldn't be paying for a sidewalk that you're not getting. I don't know about ADA compliance. I'm sure Mr. Zetz may have a word on that. I don't know. My understanding on the gravel, concrete, blacktop driveway issue was that, and Mr. Haynes or Mr. King, correct me if I'm wrong, is that since gravel driveways are no longer permitted under our code, gravel driveways were replaced with, I believe, concrete driveways. That's correct. So that's something we're not going to continue to have a driveway that's not in compliance when we upgrade. So a blacktop got blacktop, and then people who already had a concrete driveway got the apron. So I think at least those are the issues that were discussed at the last meeting. And I didn't respond to Mr. Rath's email. I got it, but I knew that Mr. King was going to respond, and I thought that would be. I didn't ignore Mr. Rath intentionally. I just knew that Mr. King was going to respond, and I had seen Mr. King's response, and that's probably what I would have said too. So rather than sending him 2 emails that said the same thing, I just let Mr. King respond. So I appreciate that. I went down there this evening, looked around. There's still a lot of work to do, but it appears to be going well. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Kathy, we seem to be getting an awful lot of feedback from Mr. Barstow's microphone. Is there any adjustments that we can?
Just not Mr. Barstow talk.
Not that I'm aware of.
Mr. Mayor, just not let Mr. Barstow talk.
That's, Mr. Barstow will not be speaking anymore this evening.
Right.
Mr. Zetz, what do you got?
I have nothing, thank you, Mayor.
Mr. King?
Thank you, Mayor. I have several items to discuss this evening. First couple are just housekeeping matters. You mentioned the open house that is scheduled for this Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Old Town Hall. That is being done in conjunction with the city, Chamber of Commerce, and the Sterling Theater. We're going to have a ribbon cutting in front of the building right at 4 o'clock, and the building will be open for people to come through and see the work that has been done there. Chamber members have been invited. We've put it out to the public to come have some light refreshments. So it should be a good time. I know Chris is gonna be there as well. I'll be there and be able to show people around the building and talk about the improvements that were done. Second housekeeping matter is just remind council on December 2nd, we will have interviews for the upcoming vacancies on our boards and commissions. So those applications will be in the next council packet, and I assume we'll do that at the beginning of the meeting as a standard. At the last Buildings and Grounds meeting, or one of the committee meetings, or maybe it was council of the whole, we talked about for this room, updating the logo that is on the wall behind the mayor. Met with Branham, they're putting together some options to be able to do that, and I'll get cost estimates to do that. The air conditioning in the Sterling Theater had a meeting today about it with Scott Cameron. We are full steam ahead on that. I asked him how long he thinks until construction begins. He said it should be sometime in January. By the time plans are completed, we reviewed everything, what needs to be done. There will be some piping and ductwork that needs to go up the back of the building, which is fine, it's gonna be tucked in the back. And then he said we'll have to go through permitting, and everything should be done before the spring, late spring with that. So that project will be completed. We did have an issue when we were over there today with the heat, wasn't kicking on, and came to find out it was just batteries in the thermostat, so we got that fixed. We'll keep council updated on that. The Main Street project, the road repairs have been completed. The contractors are working at the side of people's houses, doing the trenching right now. Had a call with the AEP rep today to ask about when the overhead lines would come down, and they were, talking in their lingo that they plan to have they're trying to get an overhead crew in there within the next couple of weeks. Waiting on a call back from them once that is confirmed. Also, the electrician will be working once those undergrounds are in to start connecting people to that. So it's moving along. Again, we'll keep council updated on that. We will be working, and I've talked to the electrician, we plan to visit the businesses down through there, each one to talk about a good time and how we can best minimize the impact we'll have to them why the electricity is out, why they're being switched over. We have a third reading of the budget scheduled this evening. Certainly happy to answer any questions when we get to that point. I do appreciate the questions we've received up to this point through the first two readings and the special meetings we've had. I believe it's a strong budget. We start to address, not only our roadways, which we do annually, but putting money towards drainage throughout the community. Long-standing drainage issues throughout the community that have been deferred, and also starting to look at our intersection improvements. So I think it's an exciting budget. Related to that, we have a resolution that was tabled at the last meeting, and it's resolution 2019-077. And that is the resolution to add one additional full-time patrol officer position. We talked about at the last meeting, essentially what this resolution, if approved, it's expediting the creation of that position that is included in the budget till now. If the budget is approved with that officer in there, we are asking that that resolution be approved to expedite that. The department has an opportunity to hire an officer that is fully trained, would be able to hit the ground running, wouldn't have to go through any additional training here. Certainly help out the staffing in the department. The budget does have money available for the remainder of this year to cover the cost of that officer coming on board now versus the beginning of the year. We've worked with the FOP to talk to them how they felt about this. The FOP has voted to approve this hiring, work through seniority issues and pay and all of that stuff. So the FOP, that step of this is behind us, and we received word that they did approve it. With that being the case, I am happy to answer any questions on those items.
Mr. Walther.
Just a quick question on the police hire. If this person is hired, the budget for 2020, does it reflect the level of pay that this officer would get? Just making sure that we didn't have an okay,
When we initially built the budget, that level was already there.
good, thanks.
Mr. Lee?
Excuse me, I'm cold. Two questions. The equalization board, I received a call from one of the people on that, wondering when that would begin. They got an email a couple weeks ago
Correct.
about asking for dates, but haven't heard anything since. Is that, where are we at with that?
Still trying to get coordination with all three members. I've had trouble getting, dates pinned down from one of the members. I know two are eager, ready to go. Ultimately, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Zatz, it is a three-person board, but they would be able to function with just two members at a meeting if need be.
Oh, correct, it might be a quorum of the board, would be two of the three.
I think we're to the point where we'll proceed accordingly, schedule those dates, and if they're able to make it, so be it. If not, we will have a quorum to move forward.
Timmy's got a question, come back to me.
All right, very good. Mr. Hicken?
Yeah, I just, mine's actually a follow-up on Andy's when it comes to how you guys determine with the FOP. It's just, did you agree to give him his accrued time? Did the FOP want his accrued time? How did the city approach that, knowing that accrued time is somewhat tied to salary? Does that sound right?
Accrued time is tied to years of service. Are you talking about vacation and sick time?
Actually, I just might as well go ahead and give me all of them.
You were gonna
So,
say something.
so the employee leave balances, typically after an employee leaves, we pay out all remaining comp time, vacation time, and then there's a calculation depending on sick leave, if they've been standing or if they're transferring. That transaction had not yet taken place, so those balances were still on our books. We were getting ready to pay them out probably tomorrow to process them. So if this works, then we would just, for now, we put a pin in it, and they would just revert to his balance.
Okay? That answers that. The other question I have is not police related, but it's on Mr. King's report. When you met with when you met regarding the air conditioning, do you anticipate any extra costs above and beyond what not only we were given, but so what we have allotted to the program?
As of right now, no. Asked that same question today. Do not believe there will be any additional costs.
Good. And the final
And if there
question,
are, certainly we'll
let us know as soon
bring
as
that to
possible.
council because we would need to do a supplemental appropriation for those if needed.
How do we invite people to the open house for the,
How have we?
yeah, I mean, is it just a Facebook thing?
It
Or
is,
is
yeah.
it an email or a letter?
Chamber sent out an email to all of their members, did not send a letter citywide or anything, and did a Facebook event on social media.
Okay. And my last question is, have you gotten any complaints from the people along Main Street as to the length of time the project? I didn't know the project would be as long as it is, but as far as I know, you guys have been talking to them regularly and there's no problems.
The only time I heard from people on Main Street are when the plates were there, and they were making noise as cars and trailers were going over, but that's all I've heard from people on Main Street.
So for the most part, you believe everybody on Main Street there?
Yeah, and being down there talking to the contractors, phone call with the contractors, they have not encountered any issues either.
Good. Okay, that's it, that's all I got.
Mr. Powell?
Yeah, BJ, out of curiosity, have you heard any kind of timeline regarding the Patasko Square demolition recently?
Yes, I had a call with them just last week or the week before. They are going through asbestos testing and mediation. Their goal is still to have it torn down by the end of the year.
Thank you.
Mr. Lee?
Yeah, last question for me. I think we're six weeks, 2 months into our 6-month moratorium. With the impact fees being the biggest part of that, I know the design standards are coming along and moving through the process, but I feel like we need to get on that. Where are we at with that?
So we did an RFQ for the impact fees, received 2 responses. Those were due October 31st, I believe, or the first week of November. Like I said, received 2 responses, reviewing those and be reaching out to one of them to negotiate, and I anticipate having legislation on the December 2nd meeting, seeking authorization to proceed. Tell you the schedules that were provided certainly fit within the remaining time.
That's what I was gonna ask is that, I'm just guessing, I think we're probably about 4 months left. Is that gonna work out?
Yes, okay, based on the schedules that were provided.
Okay, fair enough.
Mrs. Hayes?
Is it too early, or what is the timeline on, posting the 2 the two vacancies that will be created
Well,
for council.
Yeah, and there's a couple questions that I think council as a whole, we need to talk about. You know, I don't think it's too early. I don't believe results have been certified. We had only one contested race. The margin of victory was pretty large. I don't see there being any issues with that. So it is not too early to advertise. What I think council needs to talk about, and I was talking to a couple of you before the meeting here about this, is when do you want to conduct interviews? Historically, the second meeting in December has been canceled. Mr. Walter informed me he will not be here later in December to conduct interviews. We talked about doing them second meeting in January. That certainly makes organization a little bit funky because we're only gonna have 5, but we still have a quorum. So, you know, an important part of that is determining, that advertisement is determining when we would want to conduct interviews for those positions.
So the results are due to be certified on November 26th. That's the current BOE schedule. So we should know by then, we'll have official results certified. I would not like to delay getting the 2 new council members on board because it impacts committee selection. Part of doing the committee is who the actual people are. We just don't wanna have a situation where we're going to, you know, candidate number 1 is gonna fill in here, candidate number 2 is we don't know who those people are. So I think it's important to get that done. So my preference would be to have it do organizational first, get organized, and then have those interviews. That'd be January 6th, I believe, is our, I think it's-
January 6th would be the first meeting in 2020.
So we should have, right before Thanksgiving, we'll have certifications a little early this year. So we should know. I think once the results are certified, we can start to advertise. And I would anticipate, both are citywide positions, so there's a potential for a large number of people. I know when Andy was selected, we had that opening from Mr. Lenzo, I think we had 7 or 8, I mean, it was 7 or 8 people, so, we could anticipate 10 or 12. So I'll leave that up to council. That's just my 2 cents. I think it's a good time to discuss it.
Mr. Hicken?
Well, I would say this, having sat in Mr. Barstow's seat, that makes perfect sense. My only concern would be there's a lot of logistics that are gonna go into that, and that the leadership has not been selected for that year yet. And when I say there's a lot of logistics, there's questions like, are you gonna interview everybody and select 2? Are you going to, are people gonna be, there are questions about how that will take place. So there is I think there's a slight logic to organizing and then, having the meeting where you select them be the following meeting. A special meeting is okay. I guess I can probably live with any of the 3, but I would remind council that there are some ramifications that are gonna, that first meeting is, we're gonna be voting on presidents and vice presidents, different people, who know, we may even be swearing in new members of BZA, or I don't know, so cramming a bunch of stuff on that first meeting is sometimes dangerous, but I'm equal to it. I just want to remind everybody as we make the decision. And having those decisions made, usually with the guidance, and I don't wanna get into who leadership's gonna be next year, but essentially you're talking about setting some of that stuff up, and the leadership oftentimes does that. And without the leadership selected, that sometimes makes that awkward or hard, but not insurmountable.
Any other input?
Advertising now doesn't solve, it's fine.
Yeah.
Well, if we advertise, if we put on an advertisement now, we have to have a date
Yes.
when it's due, and we have to tell them when they have to show up for the interviews. So if we wait until January the 6th, and then new leadership is selected, and then we advertise, we're gonna be, it'll be February before we.
I was wondering if we, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, before we have new members, and then we're really, to me, we're behind.
I was wondering if we might advertise, get the possible people. For all we know, it may be a 2-meeting interview process. So I mean, if you get 20 people. So I was wondering if we might not advertise, set the cutoff date, and not necessarily tell them when the interviews would be until we see how many we have. Do you have to put it in the notice?
I think you have to, I think it's just that's gonna create even more problems because people will say, well, I applied, and then we say, oh, and guess what, the interview is next Monday, the 13th. Well, I'm gonna be out of town on business that day. So I think it's got to be, these are 2 citywide appointments. So we've never, and Tim's right, we've done one. I think we've had 3, I think, since we've been on. We had 3 one at a time. 2 at a time is a little different in the logistics of how we're gonna do that specifically. So I would probably, maybe to be on the safe side, I'm gonna think about having it as a special meeting, maybe on the 13th. And then if we have 2 people, then we have a short night. And if we have 20 people, it'll be a special meeting, that's all we'll have to attend. So I'll think about that. If anybody has input, I'd appreciate it to sort of inform that decision, so thanks. I mean, Mr. Walter?
That's exactly what I was gonna suggest, Todd. It's a special meeting. It's I would imagine it's gonna be a large pool. And I would think the longer we give the advertisement, and that's a good thing, especially over the holidays with all the chaos that people are going through, that if they know that it's gonna be set on, say it's the 13th of January, that gives them a little bit of a break before they come in for interviews. I would say that when I was appointed, it was late in January, so I don't know that affected too many committee setups. So anyhow, just my 2 cents. Right.
So the 6th, we would have our organizational, we'd still have a quorum. We're in good shape. We've set up our leadership. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think, I don't know exactly what date would work best, but I'd say sooner than later, especially for the sake of committees. We're gonna be in the middle of the moratorium, so there's gonna be things like impact fees that need to be discussed, and I'd hate to see, that kind of be put on the wayside for a long appointment process.
Definitely, 6th organizational, 13th, we do interviews and.
If possible, whatever works best for everyone else, but if we could do it on the 14th, I would work on the 13th, so I would have to get the time off, just in case I can't. Would the 14th work for everybody?
Well, let's check and, do you have anything on the 14th?
This year, because BZA for just this year was switched to Monday to accommodate Mr. Platt. That's created some issues, and as we see with trying to schedule council meetings, that we were going to suggest we move it back to the 2nd Tuesday of the month, so that would be the 14th.
Or even the 15th, if possible. If not, I don't want to be that guy. It would save me from having to.
Well, we better hash it out right now, because we're not gonna have any other better time to do it.
Yeah, we got to, I think we have to nail it down here sooner rather than later, because we're down 2, and if we
Can't go any longer.
we start losing people,
Yep.
we won't be able to appoint anybody, so.
What about going back the other way to like the 8th or something along that week, that first week in January, 2nd week in January,
8th or 9th,
something along those lines?
I'm available 8th or 9th.
I can do either one of those days, it's fine with me.
So organizational on the 6th, and then we're looking at something that same week, 7, 8, 9, 10.
10's a Friday, I'm gonna do that.
7, 8, 9, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. 2nd week in January.
That's the first week.
No, that's the 2nd week in January.
Even if it were the 7th, I mean, it would be something where the BZA wouldn't be scheduled on the 7th, they'd be on the 14th, so the night should be available. I agree with Mr. Powell that getting in there early rather than later is probably a good idea.
Organizational on the 6th and 7th for interviews. Is that acceptable to everybody?
Yeah. Okay, no,
7th, I cannot. 8th or 9th that
Eighth.
week.
Okay. 6th for organizational, 8th, Wednesday the 8th, the second week of January, is the 8th open for everybody? I'm hearing good stuff. All
Scott,
right.
would that be planning and zoning?
Well, planning and zoning falls on January 1st, so we do not have the schedule out, so the possibilities are doing it the 8th, or we just move the meeting to January 2nd.
I think I know what we would recommend.
Scott, can you
I
make
think
that
I know
happen,
what it
sir?
will be.
I can make that
Okay.
happen.
Yeah, this is a little on the crucial side, not that your department is not important, but we need to get organized and get a full council, so. Yes, sir.
So now that we have the date, what time do we wanna get started that evening? Do we wanna just do it at 7 or do we wanna start earlier? And how early do we wanna start?
Well,
I would prefer earlier, but I know that some people have to still travel,
We've,
so.
sometimes when we've had these specials, we've jumped into a 6 o'clock and it seems to have worked. Is that okay with everybody? Is that too tight for you?
yeah, I can manage that.
Okay. 6 o'clock. On Wednesday, January 8th, for our second, it'll be a
Special meeting.
That'll be a special meeting.
That'll be a special
For
meeting.
interviews for council. And the 6th will be our organizational meeting, first meeting of the year. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Just one question for Mr. Zetz. Is there any problem with advertising this prior to our organizational meeting, or will that be
Can we
okay?
No, you mean advertising the special meeting
Yeah, for,
before the organizational meeting? No.
no, before we've had the organization. is
No.
what I'm saying.
As long as we don't have it before the organizational meeting.
As long as you give out 24 hours in advance.
Now, what I'm talking about is doing more than 24 hours in advance. Do we have to wait till after the organizational meeting before we call the special?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
The mayor can call a special meeting, or 3 council members can call a meeting. So, what's the plan?
All right, any other discussion on that? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think, even though the organizational meeting will not have happened, I would, whether it's the administration or the current, council leadership, or perhaps even in conjunction. The last time I was involved with this, I think I was a vice president. We went out of our way to make sure that council knew exactly what was coming. So I would ask our current leadership and administration to kind of lay it out and let council know what to expect. That could be done at the meeting on the 6th, but kind of put your thinking caps on.
You know, as far as how many interviewers there are
And,
gonna be.
just all the logistics that go with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we have to, just to throw this out, I mean, we're gonna have 2 interviews. The first question is, how do that actually is going to be done? We're gonna interview for one position and then appoint that person and put them up on the dais and then let that person decide on the 7th member? Or are we going to select?
Gotcha.
How exactly are we going to do that? So that's something that we probably wanna discuss after organization. We know who the leadership team is and see what our thoughts are. So it will be, we just wanna emphasize that it will be important to be at the organization meeting on the 6th, because we'll need to, this is a big deal. We're appointing 2 citywide members. So, thanks.
Anything else? Anything else for Mr. King on his report? You had just mentioned Brent. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I got another question.
It's all right.
And it is, we have posted the vacancies for the BZA and planning and zoning, is that right?
Correct.
We have 2 posted right now?
Yes.
Or
Parks
And we also have Parks Board.
how many on the Parks Board?
2.
So, and you're planning, or we are planning on doing interviews of anybody collected for any of those positions at the first meeting in December.
Correct.
Is there, what, my experience with the first meeting in December is, it's smoke loaded. And I have no problem, because I get this princely sum of $5,000 a year to do this job. I can stay here as late as we want, But sometimes as we pile more stuff on, it makes it that night very difficult. I don't know, is the deadline for or the interview for those dates already posted in the posting?
It is, yeah, or
Okay.
they are.
I guess maybe in the, is what it is.
Well, I guess I'd ask too, are we that loaded up for the last meeting?
My experience is no, because we have the budget done
Right.
usually, and they're,
Well, it's, lots of times there's no second meeting in December.
Right.
And we may be going that way again. I would point out that this is a weird month where the first meeting is on the second.
yeah.
That's a long time to go without a city meeting. It's not unprecedented, and you know, there have been people in the past that have talked about, why are you missing a second meeting when you should give your payback? And of course, we're not paid that way. We're not paid by the meeting. If we have everything done, that's perfectly fine, in my mind. But that is a weird month, and sometimes things end up there. I don't think I need to go through emergency appropriations that have happened or different things that have happened. I don't know if we would not anticipate that. But the last time we had interviews, that was a long, and we don't even know how many we're gonna get. So if we and that was for, I think we had 4 or 5 for a position, is that correct, or did we have 2 of them?
I can't recall.
But it was an interesting interview process, and it did take a while. So, again, I'm not complaining about spending the time here, I'm just thinking about what that schedule looks like as it balloons up on that day.
Well, we have a meeting that is right now scheduled for the 16th of December. We can certainly have that, if it looks like we are going to have a whole bunch of interviews on the 2nd. We can take the time that we need to do those interviews, and then if there's things that the administration needs to bring to us, or they can defer those, we can do them on the 16th. That's fairly, somewhat ahead of the holiday season. Traditionally, we haven't had a second meeting in December in some time, but if we need to have one, we'll have one. And also, I want to point out that we still haven't set a time to have something to discuss the comprehensive plan. I was gonna bring that up later. Mr. Fulton when eventually we get to Mr. Fulton and he's allowed to give his report. And because we still have to do that, so we may combo that last minute appropriations or other things that need to be done on the 16th with the comprehensive plan discussion. We don't have to have that as a solo project for a meeting, so there we go.
As you said, everything got bumps a little bit with an early, sure, well, I'm done. So, it does give us plenty of time before Christmas. If we have to do the 16th, we do the 16th. Yes, ma'am.
I think, in my opinion, it would make better use of time if you had a comprehensive meeting after you had your full council for the new year. I mean, I'll come to it, but it would be my last meeting. It seems like having your new council members in place to understand what they're heading into, it might be something to consider. Just a thought.
I would echo that.
Mr. Walther?
I would definitely echo that having the council members that are gonna vote on it, do the discussion at a special meeting would be, or whichever meeting, would probably be the most productive, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're obviously not making any decisions that night, but yeah, if we're gonna go through the whole thing, then I would want those 2 people that are gonna be key voters on it to be involved, so.
You can always invite the applicants and see who comes. That's part of the criteria.
That's true. Yes, sir.
And you're correct, Mayor, that night we will not make decisions, but ultimately, after, come 2020, a decision will be put to council about adopting the thing, so I think it's a good idea to wait till new council members are seated.
Just what Scott wanted to hear, huh?
Sure, whatever direction you wanna go.
All right. Anything else for Mr. King? You brought up Branham, and I wanted to let the Buildings and Grounds group know that I'm working closely with Scott on we have some visions on what the sign is gonna look like down at the old town hall, in the utility department, and the chamber, and the theater. So working closely with Scott to formalize that and have something for you to look at the next meeting, so that we can move forward with that. And then you'd mentioned during the AC report, permitting. What do we have to do as far as permitting? I think you said permitting, didn't you?
Yes, the county's building department will have to permit the installation of the AC and
Okay.
electric, so, like any project like that.
Very good. All right, Mr. Nicholson.
Thank you. My report will be significantly shorter. We are now in Suite 1D. We are fully functional in there, so if you're ever in the building, stop by. Show you the new digs. We're working on year-end schedule. All departments are wrapping up their purchasing and making sure they have their POs in place. We're proceeding down the path like we always do at year-end.
Anything for Jamie? All right, thank you, sir. Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight there's a resolution on the table. I don't want to take anything away from Mr. Higgins' committee report, but the resolution is for GPD Group's scope and price proposal for the I&I program that has been added to our discharge permit by the EPA. The WRF upgrade construction administration / bidding / observation RFP was advertised November 10th and November 17th in the papers, been on the city website for that amount of time as well. Submittals are due by 11 a.m. on December 5th. That's something that was done in accordance with council wishes after the last meeting. We did have 3 water leaks since we last met. 2 saddles failed in Beechwood Trails, which is pretty common out there. The guys went out and placed the saddles in the service line, everything the city owns with new stainless steel saddles and plastic service line. We also had a main break on Jefferson Street. It's a old cast iron main. It's one of the originals. Got a circular crack in it. The crew came in on the weekend, dug up the main, put a repair band on it. Nobody was turned off. Nobody lost water service at all. So they did a great job on that. And the last thing I have, last time we met, we talked about the Barrington Ridge Hazelwood waterline loop, where we are feeding Barrington Ridge from Hazelwood now to try to give them a more reasonable pressure. We went through these 2 weeks. We had, there's 171 residents in Barrington Ridge. We had 3 houses call and complain about the pressure being too low. Went out to their houses and checked the pressure, and they were between 60 and 70 PSI, which anybody who lives in Old Town will tell you that is tremendous. That was what we were shooting for, was 60 to 70 PSI. The people that noticed the pressure difference did not install a personal PRV, pressure reducing valve, in their houses, as was suggested in the past. They'd gotten used to 100 to 130 PSI. We cut it in half. They noticed that. I did explain to them why we were doing it, for protection of their plumbing, improvements to the overall system, and everybody seemed to be okay with that. But I wanted to give you an update on that project. I'm considering it successful. We've got 3 complaints, but their pressure is in the target range that we were looking for. So outside of that, I don't have anything. Be happy to answer any questions.
Anything for Chris? All right, thank you, Chris. Alan?
Thank you, Mayor. 2 resolutions on the agenda for tonight. One is for the design of the 2020 Streets Program for GPD Group. And the second is for a mower deck, a replacement mower deck. We've made it through this year with the one that we had that was pretty much towards the end of its useful life. This was a public service project in the 2019 budget, so looking to accomplish that. Also trading one in to keep the value a little bit lower, still obviously above the $10,000 threshold. And finally, we were working on a street committee meeting, which I think we finalized for December 2nd at 5:30, if that's the consensus. So I'd like to schedule that, Kathy, with them, so no problem. Happy to answer any questions.
Is that a radial arm mower or a drag pull behind?
I don't have that information with me. It's replacing one. I think it's a pull behind.
Anything for Alan? All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Fulton?
Thank you, Mayor. 2 applications from the November 6th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting will come to council for a public hearing on January 21st. That's application ZON 19003, that's for Sage Point, and then application ZO9 19007. That is for the Country Time proposed rezoning. Also, the new planning and zoning department truck has arrived. It's been outfitted with the safety equipment and the labels, so it's in service now. Aside from that, be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, sir.
Those two, applications that will come to council, can you just remind council what planning commission did with those?
Both applications, ZON 19003, those for Sage Point. Planning and Zoning Commission recommended disapproval of that application. And the ZON 19007, that was for rezoning from the agricultural district to the RD7. I think we were proposing to do some lot splits should the rezoning go through. Planning and Zoning Commission also recommended disapproval of that request.
You like saying 007, don't you?
I did.
Like your Scott. Anything else for Scott?
Quick question.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your reply. For council knows, I asked today, Scott, if he could give me some insight as to why Sage Point was denied, but couldn't quite tell, and I realized some of that is you trying to sit there and absorb what the members are thinking. I don't know that the board typically, or commission, typically gives their reasoning, but how about on the other one? On the Country Time, was that lot split based?
That was, yeah, their plan was to rezone from the agricultural district, which is a 10-acre lot minimum, to the R87 district, that's a 2-acre lot minimum. Had that been approved, then they would go through the lot split process to create buildable lots at that point. With that, I think the concerns, and usually we ask the Planning and Zoning Commission when they make a decision to try and articulate the basis of their decision. So with this, I know there was some concern from farmland going away. There was some drainage concerns that I believe was the basis for their recommendation. For the Sage Point, there was concerns on the divergences requested in the application. There were some concerns, they were dedicating 10 acres to the school. There were some concerns on that. And then I think there was also some concerns about how long it took to go through the process, and listening to staff's comments and working through that I think they felt, because it was tabled in March, it was tabled in September, so it's been going on all year, and I think there was some concern on why it took so long. And
Thank you.
reluctance to listen to staff's comments.
You mean the builder's reluctance to listen to staff comments?
That's correct, the
Okay.
applicant, yes.
Okay.
You know, I keep thinking, I always go back when we get to this point to one of Mr. Barstow's remarks to one of the developers. This is another case then, right, where they could have built homes, they're just not adhering to what we've asked them to put on that property, is that correct?
They can request rezoning at any time.
No,
So
I mean, we're asking to put the 100 homes that we've said you could put on there, and they wanna put 500 homes, that's what I'm asking.
Initially, they were above the density allowable for the
Mhm.
property. There
Okay.
were some other logistical issues that we ran into where we'd have pages upon pages of comments when it would go to planning commission. Typically, we like to reduce those number of comments and work with the applicant in order to, find a common ground that we can work with, but the first two submittals, they were somewhat reluctant to listen to staff
Okay.
and our concerns.
Very good. Anything else for Scott? I just have a compliment for your staff. Lady called me and, we call her the bee lady in town.
Mm-hmm.
And, she's come up with some information where, we have so many hives you can have on your property, and there's a certain time of the year when the bees are active and need to be split,
Mm-hmm.
and all this good stuff that she was explaining to me, and she said she reached out, and Steve went out and spoke with her and gave her a bunch of information, and said he would take that information back to planning and zoning if we need to adapt. And she was very appreciative, because she doesn't get much reception from other areas around here, so thank you to your team for, bees, on a scale of what we're doing in town right now, bees might be right here, and housing's here, but still, that was very important to that lady, so
Mhm.
thank you and thank you to Steve, so.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I remember speaking with her, and I learned a lot about bees that day.
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor, I just wanna reiterate, I got that same message from her. She reached out to me and, she said the same, so good work on that.
Of course, Steve's
Thank
all
you.
smiles now, he's got a brand new truck. You see him going out there. I don't know if we can get him out of the truck now. But, anyway, thank you, sir. Anything for Scott? Okay. Lanier?
Thank you, Mayor. First thing, today we have third and final reading for the Parks Department we're seeking ordinance approval to establish tobacco-free zones for the partnership with the Licking County Health Department. So I'm hoping that goes through today. With the soccer season being complete, right now we are working on our 2020 programming. Some of those activities and events will be ready to go by December. We'll have a schedule out for things that are tentatively scheduled. The Liberty Park project that we bid out in August, that we were planning to rebid and open those bid documents on January 30th. So that project will be completed in 2020. And also to add to that, last Wednesday, I did receive notification from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources that we were awarded the Nature Works grant again for the second year in a row. So Carr Park will receive a nice makeover next year. So once we have that approval from the controlling board, Hall and myself will start that process to start the opening for that as well. Fee schedules, the Parks Board recommended that we start working on adding new fees and also looking at adding pool fees. So we're working on completing that process, and I'm hoping at the next meeting to have legislation to amend our fee schedule to add additional fees for the Parks Department. Other than that, I'm open to answer any questions.
Anything for Lanier? Yes, sir.
Lanier, I've got a couple questions. I got a chance to listen to your park board meeting, and this specifically goes to the foundation lights.
Yes, sir.
Through that, you made some statements in there that you were gonna get in contact with Mr. Zetz
Yes.
regarding some legal questions. Did that get done? Is that completed at this point?
Not quite. I wanted to talk about those items with you tonight if it was brought up.
Okay. You wanna go ahead and talk about them?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, that's some of my questions. I have many questions about it, but that would be my first question. As far as the legal side of it, the insurance, the liability, and then specifically the design or the choosing of designs and what can be and are there any parameters that the city needs to put on this as far as what kind of designs can be part of this foundation lights?
So, Mr. Zetz, go to you this one. There was concern with what are we going to allow as, I guess, staging in the park? What do we have to avoid? What are we allowed to have? So, with it being public property.
I'm trying to put, I mean, Lanier's asked me, Lanier and I have talked about a lot of things, a lot of things. And honestly, I'm drawing a complete blank on this, I'll be completely honest with you.
Give him a little bit of information on what we're doing in the park.
I remember the Christmas and the lights thing, I don't remember.
It's kind of like the zoo lights
Right.
and Ogilvy and Elm Creek and all the places that we're proposing to drive through the park and have a light display. And it's sponsored by a church. You want to fill
Well,
in?
I was just gonna clarify some of this, Andy's question. You know, we have an organization that came to us, wants to sponsor this, as you know, these spots in Foundation Park for people to design lit Christmas decorations. They'd be installed there for a weekend. People would drive through the park and see them. The Parks Board meeting, there were some questions about liability, having people do that. Who is responsible since they will be there all weekend? What if something gets damaged? Questions along those lines. My feeling is it's through an outdoor activities permit or something, some of those may be covered. The church would certainly be covered, I think, under their liability insurance for that. So those are the questions that were brought up about this. With a third party coming in, setting up these displays, do there need to be some parameters on what the displays can reflect, who's responsible, why they're there, those sorts of things.
I think there's probably more questions that I can answer right there in this very
I agree.
second.
Well, my question was just making sure that as we get closer and closer to this, I know that this is on there, it's being advertised there. I believe it's actually advertised on the city website at this point. So, just concerned that we haven't worked through all the details yet.
Yeah.
There's several more here that I've got questioned too, and go ahead, Mel, you probably have a little more.
Well, just on that particular thing, I mean, we've made a big deal about opening the gates and allowing people to drive through the park.
Yep.
So that would require us to do that, right?
Right.
And then who's gonna monitor that and make sure, I mean, how do we justify opening it for that, but not citizens who get upset? I mean, again, I'm all about consistency. If you have one end of the park and they loop around somehow and come, I don't know, but
That
I have a concern
It's
about.
exactly, you know, just being involved in this for so long, and with Mel also on this one is, you know, this was a big deal about closing those gates, and believe me, everybody took a lot of heat about closing them and keeping them closed. So, I know in the park board meeting, there was some discussion on, do the gates get open and left open
Or do
for
they
that
get
time?
Closed
Or who would be responsible for opening them and then closing them?
if we were to, the gates will remain closed if all goes well, the gate will remain closed all day long until that event were to happen. So around 5 p.m., we would open the gates for the event to start at 6 o'clock. The event is technically supposed to be over at 9 p.m., 6 to 9 p.m. And then at that time, it would be under the discretion of who would go to close those gates for the remainder of the night. That more so the middle gates, not the outer gates.
Go right ahead. Yep.
Go ahead, you
And
still have
this
the
is
floor.
outside organization that wants to do this?
Yes.
It is.
So I would recommend that they then have to, ask if they can pay for a special duty officer to monitor that area during that time frame.
That's
So they would have
currently
to
on there.
pay for the officer
So,
to monitor and then close the gates.
So as a part of my council packet, I gave the brain dump that both Justin and I have compiled together. And a lot of the items you're mentioning are definitely on that list. He's planning to have plenty of volunteers and I guess marshals to be around for the event, to make sure that those things happen based on the wishes of council.
So I listened to the tape, and, you know, what I heard from him was this, and I think it was, you know, it was discussion in general. So trying to understand it, not being there, listening to a tape, may be difficult. But from what I gathered from it was, he was gonna ask the chief for some help, or he was gonna ask the city for some help. And I wanna make sure, you know, what this was brought to us last meeting was, this was not going to cost the city anything to do this. I'm not saying I'm against this. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a special thing for a church to be able to do, and something that the community would enjoy. But at the same time, if you come to council and say this isn't gonna cost council anything, and then you come back and you go to the park board and say, well, if we get into trouble or we need something, we're gonna see if the chief can help us send somebody over. That type of statement, that doesn't fly.
From that statement, we encouraged him to reach out to the chief to basically find out how much it will cost to get resource officers, because they are planning to pay for the amount of officers that are needed to make sure that the event runs smooth. That goes parking, that's making sure that we have signage out for ourselves, making sure that the residents are going in one way and not coming back and forth. So,
Well, go ahead, Mel.
I'm sorry, okay. So, people are gonna park and get out?
No.
at the end of the road, so they would come in from John Reese, drive through the main parking lot that is nearest our soccer garage. They would have a tent in that soccer field area where they would have hot chocolate. It's more so a get out, get your hot chocolate, get your face painted, get a picture with Olaf, go home.
So they
And
come
then they
in
would
through
leave
John
out
Reese
of
and you have to
McIntosh.
open the gate up for them to come through?
Yes, 5 p.m., yes.
So, just to be clear, first you said volunteers and marshals, and then you said calling the chief. I would not be in favor of having a volunteer try to deal with the traffic in case there was an issue.
Okay.
I would say it would need to be a police officer that was
Okay.
on, and not something that the city paid for. So it would need to be something that organization would hire for the evening, reaching out to the PD and seeing if somebody wanted to pick that up.
Yeah,
That's just my opinion.
and you weren't here last time, but
Nope.
he stood up here and I asked him that very question, was he prepared to use police officers for this so that it runs smoothly, like the fireworks, like the Easter egg hunt, we have to have officers.
But he understood that, are you prepared to use police officers, I mean, are you prepared to pay for
Yes.
police
He
officers?
understands that.
Well, and that's why I want to qualify, because listening to the park board meeting, it looked like he was going to, if they had, so there's another piece of this, Mel. This is a one-way traffic now, so they are directing them one way, and they're responsible for not only them going one way and not having problems, people coming the other way, but even more importantly, not having pedestrians utilizing the parkway while these cars are traveling through. You know, the idea is it's
That's what I was
dark, you turn off your
concerned
lights,
about. Right.
you don't want people out there walking, so that's even more important, really, quite frankly, than somebody going the wrong way.
Yeah.
You know, this is, which, I think that's a smart thing to do, make sure there are no pedestrians walking on that roadway at that time. But it brings up other issues with the police, because, you know, let's just go down the path that this is a very successful community event. You've got, I've been involved in some of these, you know, light deals where you've got 500 cars. And where are they going to stack up? Well, they're gonna stack up, they're gonna go out, you know, John Reese Parkway, they're gonna go out Oak Meadow, they're going to be into community areas. So I don't know that anybody's, and you know, good, that's a good problem to have, but there's going to need to be some plan, traffic-wise, for, you know, that ambulance that has to get to whatever house, those type of things. Those are concerns that I would have with that. The last one, not the last one, but, you know, snow removal. Let's, God forbid we have snow that week. You know, and I know you had stated in the park board meeting that you'd be out there plowing the parkway. Well, again, this is something that wouldn't happen normally without this event occurring. And I question whether that's something you need to do, or the utility department needs to do, or anybody needs to do. This is their event, let them be the ones running it. Do we want to make sure that they are responsible for, and it's not just plowing, but salting goes right behind that.
As of right now, the streets department, they actually come through the park and salt the park to the first gate. That's part of their route when we have snow out there and ice.
Okay, I'm going through these details because I don't want them to be left behind and have someone come back in and ask for forgiveness.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, these are, and I know I'm gonna sound like I'm harping on this, but these are details that really need to be worked out. And I didn't hear it happen in the park board meeting. So that's why I'm bringing it up now.
Mr. King?
Go ahead, Todd.
I was just a little disappointed that the church waited until November the 4th to bring this for a Christmas celebration. And they waited until the last minute, practically, to bring this. I'm a little disappointed that they waited that long. Was this known? Was this the first, was when Justin Ross came here on November, I think it was November the 4th?
We had known 2 weeks prior to that, maybe. Or
Okay.
2 weeks prior to that.
Well, yeah, I just now, we're being asked to, I don't wanna use the phrase I'm thinking of, but, you know what because they wanna have this, I mean, I agree with Mr. Walther, it sounds like a great event, but I mean, what if it's really successful? We're gonna have a mess. If it's snowing, we'll have an even bigger mess. If somebody, one of those neighborhoods has a medical problem and we need to get an ambulance in, or the police department needs to get in there for some sort of issue, and we have cars all over the place.
Yeah.
I'm just a little frustrated that, again, that they waited until the very last.
I just wanna make sure we have these items identified. I'm not saying that they're insurmountable.
No, but.
But we need to make sure they're absolutely thought of and 100% detailed, so we don't get into that problem.
Mr. King?
Andy's right, the details are not insurmountable, but they're plentiful. As we're talking about this is certainly a very condensed window of time to try to pull off an event of this size. I think certainly, there are a lot of questions, there needs to be specific requirements agreed to with the group, who's gonna be responsible for what. It's just not a whole lot of time to get this done. Certainly willing to work towards, getting all this worked out, so it is a successful event, but it is a very compressed time frame for something of this size. And for that number of people to be, we're hoping that number of people to be going through the park. I didn't even think about that, Andy, with their lights off as they're driving through, stopping at the end, milling about. There's a lot of logistics to this that need to be figured out in a hurry to pull it off.
And then there will be people coming into the park who just wanna see what's going on and aren't necessarily there for the family event of looking at the Christmas lights.
Mrs. Hayes?
Okay, two thoughts. One, are we requiring them to come in a certain entrance? Because we have the possibility of a major amount of traffic down Oak Meadow and John Reese, and that isn't fair to the residents either. Two, is it possible that we can ask them to alter their plans, that the first year, while we're brainstorming and getting this under control, that there not be a hospitality tent, that it's just a drive-through event, like many others? And so my thought is, I hate to not have the hospitality, because that's their whole mission, is to get people to meet others. But if there could be a compromise, that there is no hospitality tent on the city property, and we just keep the traffic moving out to McIntosh, thank you, then maybe that would help the traffic situation where you have people pulling in, parking, kids running around the parking lot in the dark makes me very nervous, because kids just shoot out. So maybe that's just something that we could compromise the first year until we get a better understanding of how big it could be and what it looks like, is just that we compromise to, maybe they have the hospitality tent someplace else or another time, but just a thought. So just to keep it as a slow driving exhibit, and then they just move on out.
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Suzanne took the words right out of my mouth. I was gonna ask, I think that's a great compromise, maybe for the first year, not have that, excuse me, that in hospitality part. Just do the drive-through. I think that's a great idea.
I think it's a liability issue for them, and they're a young church. And I think they're extremely excited and well-intended, and they really are trying to do something fun in the city, and I appreciate that. But I think that, just the message is that we're growing with this idea, so maybe
I think it's a great
keep
idea.
it
Yeah,
moving.
if you don't know Impact City Church, they're the ones that have also been very instrumental in bringing a great success to not only the Easter egg hunt, but the fireworks. So they're
Good
established in this, but, correct me if I'm wrong, but all the lights are now working in the park?
Yes,
So we do have overhead lights in the park?
15 of them.
15
Yep.
overhead lights all the way down the parkway?
Yep.
Okay. We haven't looked for Mr. Powell yet, I don't think, so go ahead, Mr. Powell.
Kind of along the lines of getting rid of the hospitality tent, so people aren't walking around. How would we keep people from, the settlement and the other neighborhood from walking in and having them walk through while cars are driving through?
Maybe that's a church, we ask the church to have their volunteers to tell people, I don't know, this is big. Cars only.
Mrs. Carter?
And, so listen, I'm sensing a little bit of irritation with the questions, but here's my overall concern. We had a cookie walk that started small, now it's enormous, and it's fantastic, but it's enormous. It's gotten to the point where we have to close the street down. Same with the Christmas parade. We have to close the street down now because it's so successful. Now, so if we were to have an event that we didn't ask every detail and dot every I and cross every T and something happened, they would come back on us and ask us why we didn't do that. I understand that they're an established church, but this is not, and they've done city events, but this event has not been done before. So with the last minute, we have to make sure that park is not made for pedestrians. But I know I have a 9-year-old, and he would want to run around. I would have to almost tie him up, especially if there was hot chocolate and a hospitality tent. And so if there's cars driving through, there's lights, there's people, there's just a lot of moving parts that needs organization to make sure it goes off well, it's successful, but no one is hurt, and it does not greatly impact the residents in the area, who, with cars backed up and whatnot. They already suffer through the traffic with the power show and the fireworks and the different things. So we just have to think of those things in advance instead of being reactive, be proactive.
Okay, well, Mrs. Hayes.
I promise this is the last thing I'll say, for now. What you're saying, I appreciate what Mel just said, And the cookie walk is a great example, and you're right, it's fantastic. And we are really, really blessed with an organization, the Lions Club, that does it. And so maybe we could suggest, since this is a new idea, that they reach out. I know she's super busy right now with the cookie walk coming, but if they could reach out, or even get some ideas from the Lions Club as to how they started and build on that, because that's a separate entity also doing something for the city of Pataskala. So it's not like it hasn't been done, but it's, what are we, 3-4 years into the cookie walk, and it started with the same pains too, because we didn't shut the road the first year, and kids were, out, and it was very dangerous. First 2 years, we didn't shut the road. So it had the same growing pains, and that's why I think that we are the way we are now, because we saw that. So this has the potential to be amazing, and I appreciate you working with them. And I see you writing down ideas and things like that, and I appreciate you being the liaison. So thank you.
Lanier, it may be as simple as flipping them and going the other way, and staging them in the large parking lots at the other end and coming towards John Reese and towards, there's a lot of ways to
Then there's a
handle
light.
this. There's a lot of ways to handle this, so I just want, per a lot of comments, I've learned these lessons, and they're tough lessons to learn when you don't think about the details, that's why I'm bringing them up. Okay.
Thank you.
So you'll be working with Justin and Mr. King?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be meeting with Justin this week after your wishes today and let him know what you guys basically wanted from me to tell him.
Very good. Yep. No doubt that you guys will. Anything else for Lanier? Chief Brooks?
I have nothing tonight. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Anything for Chief? All right, very good. Committee chair reports. Mr. Hicken, would you like to start us off?
Sure. The utility committee, met this evening at 6. We had a couple of different items on the agenda. The first one was, I had asked Chris to talk to the utility committee if, as council will remember, as we were going through the budgeting cycle, several council members saw that, the declining balances on some of the utility funds, even though we had instituted a step in or a graduated utility increase. And some of us kind of had our eyebrows up about that. And I asked Chris to come in tonight and talk to us a little bit about that. He did give an overview of the budget and how he believes the trend of the lines are working and why they look the way that they do. There is a significant spike in 2024. The committee asked him pointed questions about them. I believe in the end, he said that those are mostly placekeepers. He does stuff a little bit different than Nathan did it, so we should expect those trend lines would look a little bit different. And if I might go so far as to also say that he's still learning. And I think the utility committee will keep an eye on it to make sure that those funds don't increase in their slope. But I believe that I think both of us here felt at least comfortable with the answers that we were given regarding that. We talked about the utility department construction specifications. And basically, those are the specifications that our city gives to contractors regarding all things utility. It came to the utility committee a month ago, and we decided to slow it down just a touch so we could ask more questions about it. I think Andy probably has asked more questions than any of us, but that's kind of what his bailiwick is, so that's good. In the end, we did pass a motion to recommend that the city pass the construction specifications when it comes to full council, which would be
The first meeting in December.
first meeting in December. So, the last thing we talked about was the CPD group, which is on the agenda tonight. I'll try to do this as briefly and succinctly as I can and field any questions. Everybody will remember that the Environmental Protection Agency was mad at us. They weren't mad at us, they're mad at everybody, but what they were really worried about was there's a lot of stormwater getting into our wastewater piping. And so all over the state, they have identified this as a problem. They asked the city to deal with it. The city put out an RFQ for different companies to tell us whether or not they could do it. To remind everybody, an RFQ is not an RFP, which makes sense, but one of the major differences is they don't give us a dollar amount, they give us their qualifications. The city ranked them all by qualifications and then looked at the first amount, and you do that after you rank them. So number one, open up the envelope, that's what they say, they can help your problem, that's the dollar amount that they can help your problem, and it was somewhere in the 150, 160.
125.
Sorry, I'm way off, 125. In any case, the city decided that was too much. With the blessing of the utility committee, they moved on to the second, which is CPD Group. Their dollar amount is, GPD Group, sorry. Their dollar amount started off at $85,000. Chris was able to have some discussions with them, and their final dollar amount was $74,960. We asked him a lot of questions about it. One of the questions that I asked personally was, why wouldn't you just take the $74,000 and replace every manhole and tell the EPA, well, we replaced every manhole, that's good enough. It might be good enough. Chris doesn't know, and we don't know, but they could eventually say, yeah, manholes wasn't good enough. You've got water coming in your pipe someplace. What these guys are willing to do is set up flow meters, mostly throughout the older portion of Pataskala, to look at where water is infiltrating all the sewage lines. And if they see a high flow during rain events, we would chase it with cameras. And this company has committed to do that. In addition, they have agreed to model in the terms of water modeling, how the city might end up dealing with a development through its midsection, meaning the Headleys Road corridor. We could get housing in there, that is the city's service area. Right now it's just farms, but who knows? Ultimately, if we keep our one sewage treatment plant, all of that wastewater will come down to the Creek Road lift station. This company has agreed to help model how that would happen and also make recommendations on the lift station. So after all those discussions, the committee also made a recommendation to council that they pass the contract with the CPD group, which is on tonight's agenda. Final question was, I don't know, can we, I'm seeing smile, am I wrong?
You're right,
Okay.
most of it.
The last item was, that was discussed was, seeing as we have new representation on Southwest Licking Sewer and Water, possibly reaching back out to that individual, Rob Platt, who was appointed last time, and seeing if there's also a new representative from Aetna on there as well. So seeing if there was, if it made sense to touch base with what we had been doing with the contract between the two. I said I thought that made sense, as I wanted council to be aware that if nobody has any problems with it, you might as well see what new people on there are willing to do. So if everybody's okay with that, that'll move forward. Nice, so,
I'll be off council once, so.
fair enough. And that's it for me.
6 weeks.
Anything for Tim? Yes.
Not for Tim, I just have a report.
Okay, well, I just want to mention thank you, and I think it's a wholehearted effort to keep working on the compensation agreement, the water agreement, because, 10, 15, 20 years from now, a lot of us will not be in these positions, but at least a relationship, if it happens, will have occurred between the two entities, which is best for the city. So I hope that you folks will go back to the table and keep trying, and hopefully Rob and some other folks, along with your help, can get something done. So I'm hoping that's a good deal. Mr. Lee, you have a report for us?
Ready for it?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Buildings and Grounds met last Monday. Talked about a few things. The trees have been replaced on Main Street, the dead trees. Thanks for doing that, BJ. We asked that BJ look into taking out trees around City Hall that not only don't look good, but they cause it.
Makes a mess with
Makes a
their
mess.
petals and berries getting tracked all through the parking lot and in the building and on carpets and.
So we looked at getting pricing on that, also asked if it could be done in-house, so he's gonna get back with us on that. Mr. Mayor already talked about the sign for Old Town Hall. We looked at some different drafts of that, narrowed it down, he's gonna bring it back to council. Dr. Ann Walther came in and talked about decorating the gazebo down at Veterans Green. Gave us a little presentation on it, absolutely all in favor of that. Weren't sure if we needed to vote on that or not, we took one just to make it formal, but she's on top of that, it'll be great. Last thing, and I asked Scott to make sure council, everybody had a copy of a proposed distressed property code. That basically, with what we've been discussing at helping out with Hazel,
Or Tesla.
Tesla Square. This would allow us to police things like that a little bit and have a little bit of teeth and be able to enforce situations like that from not happening in the city. It's very it's very brief. It's not. I mean, as you can see, it's a few pages. It makes a lot of sense. He did, in my opinion, a very nice job on it. Buildings, our committee passed it 3-0 to push it to the Planning and Zoning Commission for them to weigh in on it, and eventually wind up back at council. So I know it's the first time everybody's seen it. Again, thank you, Scott. I think you did a nice job on it. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer those, or if I can't, Scott or BJ will.
Any questions? Any other committee chair reports? Okay, on to unfinished business. Ordinance 2019-4351 for a third reading. Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Hicken. Kathy, when you're ready, third reading.
Ordinance 2019-4351, this is the third reading, an ordinance creating, establishing, and adopting section 955.14, prohibiting tobacco use in all recreational areas of the codified ordinances of the city of Pataskala.
Discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I move we adopt ordinance 2019-4351.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? And I did want to mention Chris Salyer from Licking County Health Department is here tonight in support of this also, working closely with Lanier. Any other discussion? Kathy, roll please.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes?
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Very good. Ordinance 4351 passes. On to ordinance 2019-4352 for a third reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow and seconded by Mr. Powell. Kathy, when you're ready, third reading, please.
Ordinance 2019-4352, this is the third reading, an ordinance amending ordinance 2018-4326, establishing the allocation of income tax collections received by the city of Pataskala pursuant to ordinance 2010-3959.
Discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I move that we adopt ordinance 2019-4352.
Got a motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion? And roll.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Ordinance passes. Ordinance 2019-4353 for a third reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow, and that was seconded by Mr. Hicken. Kathy, when you're ready, third reading, please.
Ordinance 2019-4353, this is the third reading, an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Pataskala, state of Ohio, during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020, and to authorize approved interfund transfers.
Discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I move that we adopt ordinance 2019-4353.
Got a motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion? And roll.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
No.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Pickens,
Yes?
Ordinance passes.
Just want to thank everybody. We have a budget and appreciate that. Appreciate everyone's hard work and input into getting it together, the meetings and suggestions. Thanks.
Yeah, I think we continue to hear, don't we, BJ, that other municipalities and cities are just now starting to work on their budgets. So,
I have read that in some articles on This Week News, and
Yep.
I can't imagine
Yep.
operating that way.
kudos, we've come a long way. I know it's a lot of work, hard work, as Mr. Barstow said, but congratulations, Jamie, and everybody that's involved. Okay, resolutions, resolution 2019 dash, well, first of all, is there any,
Mr. Mayor?
yes, sir.
I move that we take resolution 2019-077 off the table.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Got a
Second.
motion, seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion and roll to take it off the table.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Pickens,
Yes?
Lee,
Yes.
Very good. Resolution 2019-077, a resolution increasing the Pataskala Police Department staff by creating and establishing one additional full-time patrol officer position.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Barstow and seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion? And roll.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Pickens,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Fantastic. Resolution passes. Congratulations, Chief. Let's get that moving right away. If you would, please. Resolution 2019-078, a resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to execute a contract with GPD Group for the 2019 Pataskala.
That's what
Did I put an emphasis on that? I'm sorry.
Goodness
For the
gracious.
Pataskala I&I Corrective Action Plan.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Hicken and seconded by Mr. Walther. Discussion and roll.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Pickens,
Yes?
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Would you like to read this next resolution, Mr. Hicken?
No.
Okay. Resolution 2019-079, a resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to execute a contract with Glaus, Pyle, Schomer, Burns, and DeHaven, Inc., or better known as the GPD Group, to perform engineering design and bidding services for the 2020 Street Improvement Program.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Walther,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion and roll.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Pickens,
Yes?
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2019-080, resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to execute a contract to purchase a 2019 Woods model number BW10.6 rotary mower deck from Evolution Ag LLC.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow and seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion and roll.
Hayes,
Yes.
Pickens,
Yes?
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Any other motions tonight? All right. Citizens' comments. Anybody wish to speak tonight on any topic that we've discussed? You would have 3 minutes. Yes, sir. Name and address once again, sir.
Name and address again, Robert Rath, 310 Oak Meadow Drive. Mr. Barstow, I appreciate your answers to my question. As I'm sitting there, I made 4 comments. The one you talked about, bringing driveways up to spec, is why they put the concrete in those gravel driveways. And if having 50 to 90% of the driveway remain gravel, I accept your answer. But bringing driveways up, by bringing driveways up to that standard. If you don't mind, if I could approach, I have pictures of what I'm talking about.
I've been on your street several times, I know.
Well, any council member doesn't take the time, if you'd like to look at these, but this is the one I'm concerned about. This was a driveway that was just added. It's a secondary driveway at 193 Oak Meadow, okay? The guy puts the gravel in, and then this company comes through, they put cement in. 90% of it is gravel, goes to the back end of his property. The folks at 225 Oak Meadow Drive approached this council earlier in the year. They wanted to widen their driveway. They were denied. Now, I want to know, when I called this in, this was not looked at, and why this was allowed to happen. There's no need to this.
Okay, well, I appreciate you bringing it to us. We'll look at it, we'll get an answer. We're not gonna get into a back and forth discussion.
Okay, all I'm asking is, let's not have 2 standards here. The last thing I want to ask you about is this. That was a major project that you're hopefully completing within 120 days. And I'm just wondering, I'm an engineer, retired, and when we finish a project, we would sit back at a project and say, okay, let's talk about what went right and what went wrong. I ask you, as council, when this project, which I've been told is one of the major projects dollar-wise the city has undertaken, are you gonna do that and say, okay, what did we do right in this project and what did we do wrong? I don't know, just something for you to think about. And finally, I've been here all summer, as well as Mr. Perry, and we had to get a petition to get sidewalks. That should have never happened. When the decision was made to improve our street, I feel that we should have been informed in writing, which we were not, so that we would have the opportunity to say, okay, here's what we want to do. What do you think as residents? What do you think of our ideas, and what can you suggest? So that's all I ask going forward. I'm not an unreasonable person. Mr. Compton, the rest of you, I listened to your conversation about the lighting in the park. I think that's a wonderful idea. But I couldn't help but reflect back to 1988. I was president of the Pataskala Lions Club. Somebody came to me and says, let's start the haunted forest. And I'm going to tell you something. There was a lot to talk about, a lot of issues to talk about it. First year, we drew 450 people over a period of 3 weekends. Okay? And I'm going to tell you, if we wouldn't have taken the challenges and worked them within our own club, like I feel Impact City is trying to work with you on trying to do, to address the issues, which were legitimate concerns, we would have never grown to 20,000 people walking through our woods and having the sheriff's department out there making sure that Refugee Road and the traffic wasn't handled. So all I ask in that particular situation, give those people a chance. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to speak tonight? All right, we'll go around the room and we'll start with Mr. Lee.
The only thing I have is just a reminder that next meeting we'll do the proclamation for Battle Drive.
Yep.
The proclamation for Battle Drive.
That's when you wear the Warrior jersey.
I thought Mr. Lee would, spoke up a little bit on that one.
He can't speak, so I'll speak for
Proud
him.
little warrior over there.
Would you reiterate that
Ms.
again?
Carter,
Mr.
I'm a little
Lacy?
under the weather, I apologize for that.
Mrs. Hayes?
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Walter?
As Mayor Compton has mentioned, the Cookie Walk is coming up. I hope to see everybody out there. Hopefully we'll have a bigger and a better event this year with a number of different, being that it is D-Day. So it's a big, I think it'll be a big event in general. We'll be hopeful for nice weather. So hopefully see everybody out there, including Mr. Compton in his safety gear.
Mr. Zetz, you got anything, sir?
I do not.
Okay. Mr. Barstow?
I don't have anything, Mayor, thank you.
Mr. Powell?
I just want to say that Mr. Rath's points are well taken, I think, especially the part about once the project is over, kind of taking a step back and looking at it and looking at what went right, what went wrong, and what can be done better in the future. I think especially, I think the point about maybe trying to make sure that if there's a way that we can communicate with the residents around where we're gonna do certain projects a little bit better, and maybe if we can do more to get their input, I think would be a great idea. So, that's all I have for you.
Mrs. Carter?
I just want to extend my apologies for missing the Veterans Day ceremony. I had strep. That little 9-year-old of mine is a giver, so that was his gift to me for my birthday apparently. And I'm really pleased about the prohibiting tobacco in the park. I think that's fantastic. So, that's all I have.
Before I go to Mr. Hicken, I just wanna wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Mr. Hicken?
Well, happy Thanksgiving was on my list, so that, the mayor said that bees aren't really high on our list, the bees are incredibly high on everybody's list. So, if you know the problem with the bees in the world, going on in the United States, thank you for being so nice to the lady that is the apiary and taking care of the bees. Thanks to Scott. Thanks to Scott and Alan, and Chris for all speaking with me today. I had some pointed questions about tonight's meeting. I agree with two things that were said from the podium tonight, and I'm gonna temper my comments, cause, I don't know, cause that's what I've decided to do. It is a good thing to do, hot washes after action stuff. I think that everybody on this council and some of the people in the gallery could certainly come up with significant items that could be improved on. And, city projects don't move slowly, they move glacially. And nothing in this city that deals with roads or drainage happens in a bubble. If you look at what happened with Oak Meadow, it started as a road, it went to a massive road and drainage project that pulled in Pat Haven and also included drainage across a piece of property that somebody didn't give us an easement for. And it was just, and that leads to the third one, which is sometimes I feel in this position that no good deed goes unpunished. And I'll leave it at that. Don't want that to come across with too much mustard, but it has been a long project. I am excited for it to be over, and hopefully it will be successful. And other than that, I would make a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn, seconded by Mrs. Hayes. Discussion and roll.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter, Walter,
Yes.
Howe,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
You can call me now, or I can go down there and call me there. Well, that doesn't matter, right?
I agree with that too.
I didn't want to say this, but
With that, that's what, you know.